problem for people, though, is that they sometimes lack confidence. The thing to know is that anxiety changes us. When we're relaxed and calm, we're in one body. And when we become anxious, particularly over-anxious, our body changes pretty dramatically. But there's an idea out there that anxiety is a bad thing. Turns out, it's not quite true. In fact, what we know is that our brains work better. In fact, our brain-body complex in concert works better when we're a little anxious. Not too anxious, but a little anxious. And this model expresses that concept. Notice here on the horizontal axis you have low anxiety, high anxiety. And notice on the vertical axis you have low performance and high performance. And notice from the shape of this curve, the very low anxiety is associated with very low performance. Notice somewhere out in the middle of that anxiety scale, it's associated with the highest performance, the optimal level of performance. And then notice that a little more anxiety than that is associated with a dramatic drop in performance. I do presentations like this one all the time, but when I first started doing presentations, I'd be so nervous the night before I couldn't sleep. I could be talking to 5 people the next day, and I'd be so anxious about what they might ask or what I would try to share with them that I'd over-prepare. I'd have stacks of overhead transparencies that are this tall. To give you an idea how old I am, they were overhead transparencies. And oh, I couldn't think straight. That's talking to 5 people. Now I can talk to 100 people, and one of the problems I have sometimes is I'm not anxious enough. You know, I've done this presentation, for example, I'm doing today many times before. So I can just go, oh, I'm going to do my presentation about, you know, anxiety and that kind of thing. And I just don't get jacked up. I'm not anxious at all. And then I forget things. I'm not organized. You know, so I'll leave at the end of the day going, oh my God, no wonder people kept looking at me strange every time I mentioned the bear story. I didn't tell them the bear story. You know, oh, I forgot the bear story. No wonder, right? When I'm a little anxious, you know, like I am now, because Bev Heron's here and she's just so critical about everything. You know, no matter what I do, she's always unhappy and, oh God, what's Bev going to think? I get anxious. That's not true. I'm just kidding. But I actually do better when I'm a little nervous. I focus better. I organize myself better. But notice that the difference between the right amount of anxiety and too much anxiety just ain't much anxiety. That's what they think happened to the figure skaters in Italy. They were falling like flies. In the, I forget what they call this, the dance performance mixed couple, they were falling like flies. You remember this? I don't know if you follow skating, but the Olympics in Italy, it was like an epidemic of falls. In fact, that was the headline on the front of our sports page in Southwest Virginia in the Roanoke Times, epidemic of falls. They had a picture just like this one of a skater falling with this horrified look on her face. And they said, we don't understand it, but the skaters are falling like in epidemic numbers. Nobody could figure it out. People wondered, is there something wrong with the ice? People that knew anything about the ice, the skaters themselves said, this is the best ice we've ever skated on. And people were wondering, you know, are the Olympics cursed? Is there a ghost in the machine? Nobody could figure it out. But a group of neuroscientists think they had an explanation. It makes a lot of sense to me. It's not hard to imagine, is it, that the skaters were pretty anxious. This is, after all, the Olympics. Skating against, presumably, some of the best skaters in the world. And millions of people will be watching you on television. So who wouldn't be nervous? But it's not like the skaters had never skated before. They had many competitions where they won and they failed. You don't get to the Olympics unless you've had a lot of practice at things like that. But it's not hard, is it, to imagine that even under all that, after all that practice, skaters would be pretty anxious. The stakes are pretty high. And now imagine, for whatever reason, the first 5 or 6 skaters go out. Imagine that the first 3 or 4 fall. Just call it an accident of time or something, but they fall. Now imagine what the 5th, 6th, 7th skaters are thinking. Oh my God, is there something wrong with the ice? And imagine out of them 2 or 3 fall, what the next 8th, 9th, and 10th skaters are thinking. Oh my God, are the Olympics cursed? And the next thing you know, you have an epidemic of falls. That's what's believed to happen in people who have a lot of anxiety in their body, and they get stuck in patterns of behavior that are hard to get unstuck from. It's like this old Gary Larson cartoon where Roger is very nervous about his performance with the symphony. He's thinking to himself, I won't screw up, I won't screw up, I won't. And if you notice carefully, Roger's forgotten the second of his 2 symbols, hence the title of the cartoon, Roger Screws Up. We can become so rehearsed and practiced in a pattern that it is hard to escape the gravitational force of it. We get pulled into it, and it's difficult for us to rehearse or practice another set of maneuvers to keep us free of it. A story I like to tell people, and it's a story about a woman who experienced autism. I know lots of you don't work with people who experience autism or developmental disabilities, but this story, as far as I'm concerned, has applicability to all kinds of people.